So as we all know, yesterday there was a meeting. Now I'm not sure if it's like Congress or the Senate or exactly what it's called. I'm just going to call it Congress for the brevity of this video because that's what just naturally flows off my tongue. Anyways, there was a meeting in front of Congress about the ATF and their possible, willful violations of the Constitution, making up laws as they go. From what I gathered from everything, the main thing was, should we step in because it's obvious the ATF is making and creating laws, and that's our job. And the whole point of our government is separation of power. Somebody that makes a law cannot enforce the law. Somebody that enforces the law cannot make the law because that's supposed to separate in case, you have a neighbor that either makes or enforces laws, not liking you and making a law, then enforcing it specifically on you. It's supposed to spread the power out across the whole entire government to prevent things like that. Because otherwise you totally could. I could look at my neighbor and be like, yeah, I just made a law last night that your grass is too long, and since I enforced that law, I'm going to arrest you and send you to jail because you did something I'm not a fan of. Fill in the blank, XYZ. So, the specific part of the hearing that we're going to be looking at today is where my name was brought up as evidence of the ATF making up their own laws, willfully violating the Constitution, and destroying American families' lives. Remember, this is how many people, every single day, I'm not looking at the screenshots, it's like 2019 or something like that, or 2020. Every single day, the ATF destroys more families than drunk drivers do. That's how bad this problem is getting.
Chairman Fallon, Biggs, Ranking Members Bush and Jackson Lee, thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to speak on this important measure.
One of the most important things you need to remember is if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can do that by shopping at OnlyTacticalFans.com and purchase one of these Freedom Star beanies. And honestly, this green one with the camouflage star looks sick. This is a damn good looking beanie. And don't forget, any orders over $30, you get the mystery patch. Unfortunately, I can't show you what this patch looks like, and I definitely can't sell this patch because the design I came up with in my head unfortunately looks like something that's absolutely not supposed to be. And as soon as someone pointed it out, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And there's no way I'd be able to explain my way out of this and say what the design is actually supposed to be. I mean, take this hat for example. On every video that I showed, I explained this is not a Satanist symbol. And yet, even in the comments of this video, there's going to be people saying, is that star a Satanist symbol? Like, if I can't explain this away, there's no way I can explain this away. Back to the video.
I'm an attorney working in the Second Amendment space. I'm a child of immigrants, and I guess in following their lead, I decided to do a job that most Americans didn't want to, and that's protecting fundamental rights. I've been studying the law and policy of arms for over a decade, but I think most important for this hearing is my experience representing individuals and small businesses who have been caught up in some of the flip-floppery that ATF has engaged in. Representing individuals and small businesses that have had their lives shattered, their employees left jobless because of, frankly, innocent omissions that were characterized as intentional misconduct by the ATF. These individuals, oftentimes in the firearms industry, are employers with less than 15 employees. That's the majority of the industry here. And I've represented these people for nominal or no fee, frankly, because I feel it's the right thing to do. And what I've seen ATF doing in these prosecutions is extremely concerning.
Now, like I had said before, they operate on more or less a skeleton paycheck. The only way they're able to do this and fly out around the country and take on these Second Amendment cases, in some cases with little to no compensation, is through this fundraiser right here. This is the Second Amendment War Chest. Now, this fundraiser does go into a legal trust. What does that mean? A legal trust means that money absolutely has to go for what the legal trust says. So the fundraiser says it's going strictly to fight Second Amendment cases, and the legal trust says it's strictly going to fight Second Amendment cases. So let's pretend they took this money, spent it on a yacht. We could literally sue them. Like, that's how airtight a legal trust is.
The threats that are posed by ATF's overreach are not theoretical. They're very real. And they're not limited to arm braces or the zero tolerance rule either. I'd like to tell you guys about Patrick Tate Adamiak. He was a 28-year-old Navy sailor, and he was recently convicted for dealing in machine guns. Now, looking at that headline might not cause you to take a second thought. But when you scratch a little deeper, the machine guns Tate was convicted of dealing in were actually boxes of cut-up, inoperable parts that the ATF had approved the importation and sale of as unregulated parts kits years ago. And then in an unpromulgated, unpublicized change of opinion, ATF decided that that amount of cut-up was not quite cut up enough. They'd secured a conviction, and again, 28-year-old Tate, who dealt in parts that were purchased in open commerce with a credit card, is now awaiting sentencing, and his plans of marriage are indefinitely on hold.
All right, so what he's talking about here is the Tate case. The particular Tate case, remember, they found other stuff in his house that they brought up in the trial, but that is irrelevant. What they based their search warrant off of, what they came into his house with, was a bandsaw cut receiver. When firearms were being imported, the ATF went through several stages of what they found to be okay to consider something parts and not an actual firearm. So it started off with the receiver needed to be cut. That's it. It didn't matter how, you needed to have the receiver cut in half. Most people did it with a bandsaw cut. This way, people that have an SOT or they want to make a semi-automatic firearm out of it can reconstruct the firearm with minimal effort. Because all you have to do is basically take a welder and re-weld it. Done. It's simple. In my opinion, it's the way it should be. Well, later on, they were like, no, it can't be a bandsaw cut anymore. It needs to be a torch cut. So that's what they did. Well, then they decided a single torch cut was not enough. Now you gotta have 3 torch cuts, and they have to be at an angle. Later on, they decided not only is 3 torch cuts through the receiver not enough, now you also need to torch cut the barrel. The implications behind the Tate case is, if they actually go back and start enforcing the law based on the outcome of his trial, that would mean any imported barrel whatsoever would be illegal unless it came on a firearm like, what's a good example? We'll go back to Segas. So if it came in on a Sega where it was sporterized and you had to change it over, that would be okay. But any sort of like parts kits that still had a functioning barrel, that barrel, because it's not cut, would be considered a machine gun. Essentially what they're trying to do is erase the line so you can't tell what is or is not illegal, and then also go back in time. Since the current method, you have to have 3 torch cuts on the receiver, plus the barrel needs to be cut. Using what we've learned off the Tate case, say that were to stick and he were not able to win, any kits whatsoever that have a not torch cut barrel would now be considered machine guns.
I'd like to tell you about Matthew Raymond Hoover, who's a political commentator who is accused of advertising metal cards with a drawing of an alleged machine gun part on it. A drawing.
Now, I'm not going to lie, this part kind of broke me a little bit, because hearing the truth and how I got victimized just lets the reality set in. Because remember, I wasn't manufacturing, I wasn't selling, I simply advertised, aka I talked about a picture. And that's all it is, a picture, nothing more, nothing less. And when the prosecutor comes at me with like 64 years and millions of dollars in fines and wants to take my house away and kick my family out on the street, that just hardens my resolve. It puts up the shields like, whoa, shields up. You can't hurt me at that point. I mean, honestly, you can't. I don't even exist. I've been deleted. I'm just there to fight and fight for what's right. And I'm able to go through all this because every time they do something like that, make me drive to Florida, hit me with all these ridiculous charges, magically somehow my YouTube channel decides to become deleted at the exact wrong, or demonetized at the exact wrong time. All that just makes me angrier, it makes my shields thicker, and I'm able to take all this on. But when he started pointing out exactly how I've been victimized and everything, oof, it just cut right through all my defense barriers and kind of broke me down for a second. So Just wanted to put that out there. That was a little emotional for me to watch.
ATF took the incredibly aggressive position and vindictively is prosecuted Mr. Hoover, suggesting that this drawing is actually a combination of parts. He is facing over 60 years in prison, a cancer-stricken man with not an ill-willed bone in his body, and several young children.
All right, so in that part, he had said that I had no ill-will bone in my body. I believe that was the words. That's mostly true. I do have resentment and hatred for the AK-47 because it's a pile of crap rifle. Everybody told me it was awesome. I bought it as one of my first rifles, and then I used it, and I realized how much of a piece of crap it was. And so every opportunity I get, I just drop my pants, take a big old dookie on that rifle to try to help people to avoid the learning curve I had to go through. Like when people post the AK-47 is the best rifle ever made, I'm like, have you even ever shot one before? Like, how can you make that statement? It is so incredibly false. Like, literally, when the M16, I'd probably say either A1 or A2 came out, it made that rifle obsolete. And that was like, what, 50 years ago? And you're still claiming it's the best rifle ever? Why don't you just go ahead and claim that the Mosin Nagant is the best rifle ever? Or the M1 Garand, or the 1911 A1. I mean, that's a cool pistol and all, but saying it's the best pistol ever made is a little bit ridiculous. So, other than that, I'd say it's pretty much accurate.
I think it's important when we think about the pistol brace problem to look at what law we're dealing with. We're talking about interpretations of the National Firearms Act. This is an act that in its original drafts sought to regulate handguns. And this is why it sheds some light as to just how absurd the pistol brace problem is. Short-barreled rifles were added to the act to correct an obvious loophole to a handgun restriction. For it was raised in the hearings that if pistols were regulated, but you could simply cut down a rifle, well, that would be the effective equivalent of a pistol. Later on, to secure passage, the reference to pistols and revolvers were slipshottedly removed, but the vestigial remains of a pistol regulation, the barrel length restrictions, were there, leaving the rules that we're now dealing with, the law that we're now dealing with interpretations of, as kind of like a cancer-prone vestigial organ. It doesn't accomplish anything useful, but as many Americans and some of my clients have found out, it sure can get you into trouble. The argument that these guns, under a law that was designed to designed to regulate concealable firearms, become more dangerous when you make them less concealable by adding a component to the end is so obviously and intensely contrived, it's kind of absurd. Insofar as zero tolerance goes, the GCA, the Gun Control Act, has made federal firearms licensees the gatekeepers to access to the Second Amendment right for most Americans. What we're seeing now is a two-pointed prong where ATF is revoking licenses for little to no reason. I've seen it as simple. The violations they were alleged were as simple as a customer had filled out black as their race, but not picked Hispanic or Latino.
So what is he talking about here? He is talking about with FFLs, the whole point is supposed to be that FFLs, they're humans. Humans make mistakes. That's just the way it is. On his particular example, he was talking about in the race question. So it asks what color your skin is, black, white, whatever. And then separately, it says, are you Hispanic or Latino or white or not? I forget how the exact question is worded. This is what it looks like right here. Anyway, these are two separate questions, but how they're put together and the similarity of them, most people assume it as one particular question, and if they're not Hispanic or Latino, they'll skip that part, and then they'll just fill out the other part. Common mistake. Like this is a thing. And the gun shop owner is not supposed to coach somebody on how to fill out the 4473. We're not even going to get into that. What I'm getting at here, though, is that is a mistake at least 60% of the people filling out the 4473 run into. It's a deliberate trap to make you fail the background check.
That didn't strike me as terribly nefarious. I think that ATF has a moral obligation to really look at how it is enforcing these laws. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
And now we get to the tweet.
Can you see this tweet?
Yes, I can.
This is from January 27th, 2023 at 7:51 p.m., where you said something very, very disturbing. What were you thinking when you wrote that statement?
I was very upset about the very public execution of an individual, but I don't think that that's the subject of this hearing.
So what I believe they were trying to attempt to do here is paint him as some sort of extremist. However, it backfired. Because you got to remember, most of their supporters, i.e. Democrats, they're all about the defund police movement. So I think they actually, with this tweet, made him more relatable to their own constituents and probably even helped them side with them a little bit. I believe how he answered it was pretty based because, yeah, that's what it was about. I believe the guy's name is Duncan Limp. Anywho, if I was them, I wouldn't have made that move. I would have tried to find something that says he's either anti-drug or racist. If I couldn't find those two things, I wouldn't have even brought up the whole side spin thing to try to convince everybody else, like, hey, look over here at the straw man. The straw man's bad, so by de facto, he's bad. And it failed. I truly believe they made him more relatable to their own constituents. Now, one thing that they made overly clear in this hearing is YouTube videos matter. They didn't use Fox News videos. They didn't use documentaries from the History Channel. They didn't use any of that. They used a bunch of YouTube videos as evidence. What does that mean? That means your video, regardless how little or how large your views are truly making a difference in this country. You, I'm looking at you, are making a difference. So what am I asking of you? Don't stop, push harder. What you're doing is working. You are changing people's opinions about things. You are making a difference in the world. Don't believe, oh, I'm too small, no one pays attention to me, or like, I'm making these videos, but they're not good enough, or you're making a difference. You really are. They proved it in this hearing. Like I said, what were the sources they referenced? Almost exclusively from YouTube. Good job, man. Keep up the good work. You really are doing a good job. Anyway, kind of been rambling on for a second here. If you'd like to help support the channel, shop at OnlyTechFan.com and purchase a Freedom Beanie. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you can always shop at my affiliate links. It's an Amazon link right in the description down below. Even if you don't purchase what that particular link is for, just clicking on it and doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway. You're literally already going to do it. I get a kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.